You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Hey, it's Ian Ballinger from the Free Stater here on the Lanterns Radio Network. Now, most people listen to the show when it goes up every Friday at 7 p.m. Central Time on Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, or even on your iPhone podcast app. But you can also listen to the show over at lanterns.buzz. That's lanterns.buzz, where the show plays on replay every weekday and weekend at 11 a.m. Central Time. Every day throughout the week, you can listen to the replay of the show on the lanterns.buzz radio stream. Aha! 11 a.m. Central Time and 3 a.m. in the morning. Just fantastic times. If you're driving out late, you can listen to the show. And if you're waking up in the morning, driving to work, going to lunch during work, whatever, show's available for you to listen to right there on replay. That's lanterns.buzz. And while you're over there, I encourage you to check out some of the other great shows that the Lanterns Radio Network has to offer. You've got Bells of Liberty, Todd Huff Radio, Battle for Freedom, Patriot Politics, Defenders of American Exceptionalism, The HollowNet, Fires of Liberty, Battlefield Live, The Conservative Syndicate, and many other special programs. You may have heard back during CPAC even, they did a huge live stream, continuous coverage of CPAC. Go to lanterns.buzz for great content. We're here to fix the machine. Lanterns.buzz. The world's gone mad. This is the Free Stater. True conservatism, constitutionalism, may be in the minority now when it comes to the dialogue on political affiliation, but that doesn't mean we stop fighting. We fight for principles over party, values over politicians, and truth over feelings. You've entered a state of freedom. This is the Free Stater. It is Friday, June 16th, 2017. Just days after James T. Hodgkinson, the shooter in Alexandria, fired upon GOP members of Congress practicing Wednesday at a baseball field in Alexandria, Virginia. James T. Hodgkinson, the 66-year-old, died from his wounds sustained at the scene when he was brought down by Capitol Police. Hodgkinson managed to hit 5 people, including Representative Steve Scalise. Because Scalise is the House Majority Whip, a security detail was at the field and able to take down the shooter. Representative Barry Loudermilk, a Republican from Georgia, joined the Glenn Beck radio program on Thursday to talk about his harrowing experience at the field. Mr. Beck pointed out that the relatively low number of people hit was remarkable, considering how many rounds the shooter fired. The Loudermilk remembered this guy, quote, was not just rapid firing. He was choosing his targets. This article from The Blaze. Loudermilk described the moment of praying over Matt Micca, a D.C. lobbyist who had volunteered to help the congressional team get ready for the game. Micca was shot multiple times in the chest and was in critical condition after the attack. He is currently in stable condition and recovering. Loudermilk continued, quote, I could not believe he was still alive at that point. As bad as the bullet hole was in his chest, I laid my hand on his head and I prayed for him. We live in troubling times indeed. Just yesterday, the Blaze reported of shots fired at truck toting a Make America Great Again flag. This article by Sarah Taylor. Indiana police are investigating an incident that occurred on Tuesday on Indianapolis's Interstate 465, which saw a Dodge pickup truck shot at multiple times. The truck was flying a pro-Trump Make America Great Again flag as well as an American flag. Police reported that the truck was fired at multiple times and one of the bullets struck the vehicle. Witnesses to the incident described the suspect as a light-skinned black male in his early 20s with a sleeve tattoo. Reports claim the driver was operating a white Chevy Malibu with Louisiana license plate. At this point, law enforcement doesn't seem all too sure whether or not this was a politically motivated shooting or if it was an incident of road rage. Troubling times indeed, especially after a Democratic strategist said he wasn't sorry for posting hashtag Hunt Republican Congressman and hashtag Hunt Republicans up on his Twitter account. James Devine said on his Twitter account, we are in a war with selfish, foolish, and narcissistic rich people. Why is it a shock when things turn violent? Hashtag Hunt Republican Congressman. In another tweet, he said, in 2002, Scalise was a speaker at the European American Unity and Rights Organization, a group founded by David Duke. Hashtag Hunt Republicans. It is insensitive, James Devine told WKXW-FM on Thursday, and I don't care. You want me to be politically correct? I don't have time for that anymore. I'm not apologizing if it offended Republican snowflakes. In a simple click onto Mr. Devine's social media account, he describes himself as a patriot, a citizen of the world, a Democrat, a philosopher, a journalist, a statesman, and a proud father. Complain about hashtag Hunt Republican hashtags only if you rebuked Sarah Palin's crosshairs on Gabby Gifford, or the image below. Otherwise, go F yourself, said James Devine 23 hours ago. 4 hours ago, he claims he would prefer civil discourse or use of water to douse a flame, but fighting fire with fire just seems to work better. Hashtag Hunt Republicans. He said that to Rand Paul. Just a couple days ago, we were told, and I even retweeted this and supported it on my own social media accounts, from people like Brad Thor, Glenn Beck, so many others, that there is absolutely nobody to blame for the actions, for the shooting that happened.
I don't blame Bernie Sanders, and I don't blame a lot of the left, but I'm telling you what, Brad, it's really, really hard for me not to when I see verified on Twitter Huffington Post reporters and Vox writers, and even, heaven forbid, actual lawmakers who are out saying, well, maybe this was karma, or this is what Steve Scalise and Republicans get when they try to undo Obamacare and take away people's health care. Really hard for me not to really kind of put the onus on them here.
Yeah, well, you could put the onus on them for their own comments. I mean, that obviously is just absolutely repugnant to put the onus on somebody shooting to somewhat justify it by the healthcare reform attempts in Congress. I mean, that's insane. But you pointed out that this guy was at an Occupy rally. Well, you look at an Occupy rally versus a Tea Party rally, and I understand now I'm making it political. But you had rapists at the Occupy party. You had a guy defecating on a cop car. I mean, you had all this stuff. You didn't have rapists are defecating on cop cars at the Tea Party rallies. Yeah. So I think that there's a certain type of rhetoric potentially that attracts some nutbags. But even there are well-meaning people who believe differently than you and I do at the Occupy rallies. So we can't even blame them and paint them with an entire brush. This guy's nuts, and anybody who tries to attribute it to anything else is being incredibly disingenuous.
I both disagree and agree with that statement in that anybody who tries to attribute it to anything else is being incredibly disingenuous. I'm at a crossroads. It's really hard to... When the mainstream media, when the Huffington Post, just days before, prior to the Scalise shooting, the Huffington Post published a piece that said, impeachment and removal from office are only the first steps. For America to be redeemed, Donald Trump must be prosecuted for treason and, if convicted, executed. Now, of course, them being the cowards they're being and not wanting to own up to what they put on their own website, on their own news site, the Huffington Post removed the article. But that Democratic strategist, the Huffington Post, the Democrats leading the hashtag resistance movement, calling for college students, calling for fellow liberals, fellow leftists, fellow Democrats to be unruly and to resist anything and everything that Donald Trump does. Could it not? Could there not be some attribution laid to this saying, hey, you guys are inciting this. Can we stop? You did not. I promise you. You did not see the right doing this. You did not see right-wing shooters go out during Obama's presidency and shoot Democratic politicians. Yes, you had people post memes that were anti-Obama. You had people post, oh, use a liberal hunting card and stuff like that. You did not have them go out. You don't have to go very far. You don't have to go deep into the bowels of the leftist machine to find Twitter posts, social media posts, and figures on the left advocating for violence against conservatives, Republicans, and Trump. Kathy Griffin, the New York Shakespeare in the Park deal, where Julius Caesar was an orange-haired... It was Donald Trump. It was totally Donald Trump. It was not Julius Caesar. It was Donald Trump. Come on. Being stabbed to death by political rivals. And then, as the Washington Examiner reports, in an opinion piece by Michael Barone, there have been multiple violent threats and actual violence against Republican House members. Virginia's Tom Garrett had to cancel town halls in response to a message that said, "We're going to kill your wife." The message to upstate New York's Claudia Tenney was, 1 down, 216 to go. A Tucson school official was arrested for making threats that Arizona's Martha McSally's days were numbered. That's what he said. Quote, Martha McSally's days were numbered. Not all the violence has come from persons on the left. A Montana Republican candidate shoved a reporter who was questioning him persistently. He was charged with assault, sentenced to 40 hours of community service, and contributed $50,000 to the Committee to Protect Journalists. And he did that bit unprompted. Reading this from the Washington Examiner article. I would like to note that, yeah, you shouldn't have shoved him. You should have been charged with assault. I get that. It was Greg Giaforte or whatever his name is. But at the same time, that's not to the level of Kathy Griffin. That's not to the level of threatening somebody's wife. Some will say, as the Washington Examiner article continues, that this is a natural reaction to Trump's offenses against propriety and the allegedly harmful policies he and the Republicans support. Certainly, Trump has repeatedly transgressed long-standing political etiquette, and in ways that often harm him and his party more than his opponents. Too many Americans have convinced themselves that they are morally entitled to use violence to #resist, as if Trump were some reincarnation of Hitler. As I write, the congressional baseball game is scheduled to go on Thursday night. It did. Is there a chance we can return to normal nonviolent politics as well? Again, that article was by Michael Barone of the Washington Examiner. I want so badly to just lay all the blame on the left. But I know that if I do that, it's a tough pill to swallow. But we've talked on this show before about removing the beam from your own eye before you remove the twig, the splinter, from the eye of somebody else. Now, in this case, the beam in the people across the aisle's eyes might be an entire forest, but that's besides the point. We're all to blame. We're all to blame for what's happening in America today. The left, the right, the moderates, the centrists. We're all to blame. You don't remember during the election how quickly we forget the violence that were at the Trump rallies? What they called conservatives who weren't all in for Trump. We must be traitors. And then those of us that weren't all in for Trump, maybe we contributed to it too. I'm not even going to say maybe we did contribute towards it too. We didn't try very hard, looking back on it, and trying to reach across the aisle and unite with people who, for the most part, share the same views we do. They were just voting for a guy we disagreed with. And we didn't think very highly of them. They didn't think very highly of us either. And so the right ate itself, and it transformed into something entirely unrecognizable. It wasn't the right wing that the Tea Party saw. It wasn't the right wing that the Restoring Honor rally saw in Washington, D.C. It wasn't a principles-based right wing. It was an emotions-based right wing. And that's to be expected, too. I mean, it happens every election cycle. We get so passionate about the candidates that we want to support that we forget the principles that we're allegedly supporting those people for. There's this great piece that Glenn Beck did. Liberals are concerned, quote, liberals are concerned about care versus harm. They argue that if we don't have universal health care, children will die, unquote. And he makes a good point there. Obviously, the leftists there are wrong. I don't know if leftists know this, but there was health care before Obamacare. But by creating that boogeyman, they're able to justify the resistance movement, and they're able to justify the calls for violence. They're able to justify their movement. If we want to avoid further violence, politically motivated violence among Americans in this country, we have to continue to reach across the aisle, as hard as it is. is so hard. You know how easy it would be for me right now to just say, it's the left's fault, get him. I'm deep down inside, human instinct, I want to say that. But I know that it's not just them, it's us too. I respect the right so much because we are putting up with a lot of crap right now. But at the same time, man, we're not doing near enough. The only answer I have is to hold fast in the truth and to love those who hate you. I know that doesn't sound like an answer. I know that's hard. But nobody said fixing this would be easy. Nobody said fixing this would be easy. And it is so hard. It's so hard to say that. It's so hard to say that there are some people you're not going to be able to reach. There are some people that don't want to reach across the aisle and try to find common ground and try to live next to you peacefully. There are some people that aren't going to want to do that. That's fine. But we have to be the ones who want to do that. We have to be the sanity in an insane world. We have to be the sanity in an insane world. We have to be the ones that say there are absolute truths. Because if you look at the campus left right now, if you look at the mainstream left right now, a lot of Americans don't even believe in absolute truth. There is absolute truth. There is a truth. The truth is absolute. I don't know how many other ways you can say it. For a lot of conservatives, it's just common sense. The truth is absolute. But for a lot of other Americans, I mean, you hear it all the time. I've even heard some of my own coworkers say it. Well, you know, everybody has their own truth. No. No, that's not true. And until both sides can acknowledge what absolute truth is, we're not going to fix this. So to the constitutionalists that preach absolute truth, to the constitutionalists that are only interested in the truth and not feelings, but understand feelings and understand why people feel the way they do. I'll be the first to tell you that the whole snowflake thing, the whole snowflake culture, I think it's stupid. I think my generation is entirely too oversensitive. And I think the last generation, their parents, I think, to be honest, you guys raised a bunch of wimps. You guys raised a bunch of wimps who go on Twitter and they say, oh, hashtag adulting when they're boiling an egg. You know how many college students don't even know how to boil an egg? You raised a bunch of wimps. I'll be the first to admit that. We've raised a generation that is scared of masculinity, is scared of anything representing Western values or American values. So yes, I acknowledge that. Okay. But we have to still make an attempt to understand why they feel that way. Okay, well, they feel that way because they were raised to feel that way. Okay. How do we use the truth to show the other side there's nothing wrong with masculinity? There's nothing wrong with the quote-unquote patriarchal culture that you claim we live in. And there's nothing wrong with American values. In fact, we live in the greatest country ever established on God's green earth. The only way that we are going to be able to convey to the other side that we are not the evil hate mongers that their media, their figures, their politicians are making us out to be, is to live out the principles that we claim to believe in. We have to be charitable. We have to be peacemakers, as hard as it is. We have to love the people who hate us. And we have to hold on to absolute truth and only absolute truth. Anything outside the truth has no place in constitutionalism and has no place in the conservative movement.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Hey, it's Ian Ballinger from the Free Stater here on the Lanterns Radio Network. Now, most people listen to the show when it goes up every Friday at 7 p.m. Central Time on Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, or even on your iPhone podcast app. But you can also listen to the show over at lanterns.buzz. That's lanterns.buzz, where the show plays on replay every weekday and weekend at 11 a.m. Central Time. Every day throughout the week, you can listen to the replay of the show on the lanterns.buzz radio stream. Aha! 11 a.m. Central Time and 3 a.m. in the morning. Just fantastic times. If you're driving out late, you can listen to the show. And if you're waking up in the morning, driving to work, going to lunch during work, whatever, show's available for you to listen to right there on replay. That's lanterns.buzz. And while you're over there, I encourage you to check out some of the other great shows that the Lanterns Radio Network has to offer. You've got Bells of Liberty, Todd Huff Radio, Battle for Freedom, Patriot Politics, Defenders of American Exceptionalism, The HoloNet, Fires of Liberty, Battlefield Live, The Conservative Syndicate, and many other special programs. You may have heard back during CPAC even, they did a huge live stream, continuous coverage of CPAC. Go to lanterns.buzz for great content. We're here to fix the machine. Lanterns.buzz. Hey everyone, we do not have sponsors. And by we, I mean me. I don't have any sponsors. So I want to take this time to tell you about some projects that are always at the top of my list and in the back of my mind. They're fantastic projects. The NazareneFund.org. For several years, ISIS has invaded peaceful communities in the Middle East and painted the Nazarene symbol on the door of people they seek to convert, extort, or murder. While ISIS uses the Nazarene symbol to symbolize death, we use it to symbolize life. Mercury One is a U.S.-based humanitarian aid and education nonprofit organization that established and administers the Nazarene Fund. The Nazarene Fund aids in the restoration of Christians and other persecuted religious minorities in their communities who have been targeted by ISIS for their faith. I want to make it clear, I am not endorsed by Mercury One. They have not paid me to say any of this, and I'm not directly affiliated with them in any way. Be that as it may, I think that what they're doing is extremely important, and I want to share it with you. So rather than push a sponsor for you right now, in large part because I don't have one, I want to share their mission with you and direct you to where you can go to help. Now, in 2014, the Christian community in Syria and Iraq were facing the greatest calamity in its 2,000-year history. The Islamic State, ISIS, exploded out of Raqqa, Syria, the capital of its self-proclaimed Islamic State. In a lightning strike that surprised the world, ISIS forces captured Mosul, Iraq's second-largest city, and all of nearby Nineveh plain, the traditional homeland of the region's Christian community. What followed was a campaign of extortion, murder, and displacement not only of the Christians, but of other ethno-religious minorities in the region. By 2015, a population of 3 million people was reduced to only 300,000. Most of them displaced from their homes and fleeing to other countries. In August of that year, Glenn Beck took the stage, and the Restoring Unity rally in Birmingham, Alabama, declared the situation for it was genocide. Mercury One donors immediately responded, and the Nazarene Fund was launched with the goal of rescuing 400 families. No one at the time that realized that a movement was born, and over the course of the next 18 months, Mercury One has far exceeded its original goal, and the numbers speak for themselves. 1,290 families rescued, 5,202 people saved. Fortunately, the tactical situation is changing. Coalition forces have liberated most of Nineveh. Mosul will soon be under Allied control. An attack on Raqqa is imminent, and Mercury One is shifting its focus from rescuing to rebuilding and restoring the lives and communities of these persecuted people. We're so happy to shift this focus from providing immediate basic care for individuals to rebuilding and restoring communities by funding projects that will have a future impact on health and education for years to come. Mercury One funded projects include a medical clinic in Lebanon, a medical clinic in Greece, school in Beirut, Lebanon, a school in Athens, Greece, a mobile trauma center in Acre, Iraq, a trauma center in Al-Qash, Iraq, a community center in Nitra, Slovakia, and a transport van in Brazil. As their mission continues to evolve both internationally and at home, please continue to support all of Mercury One's efforts by donating now. To donate, go to mercuryone.org or thenazarenefund.org. It's a great cause. They need your help. If you're able to donate, I encourage you to donate. I encourage you to go, again, thenazarenefund.org, and donate if you can. God bless. Laus Deo. I want to talk to you about the 912 Project. Now, this is something we've discussed on the show a lot. And I mean a lot, and it's something we're going to discuss on the show a lot more. At the origin of America, our founding fathers built this country on 28 powerful principles. These principles were culled from all over the world and from centuries of great thinkers. We've distilled the original 28 down to 9 basic principles. And if you believe in at least 7 of them, then we have something in common. They've also added 12 values that represent the qualities of those who founded our country. If we can all live by these, we believe America can get back on course again. Now, their advisory board consists of some amazing conservatives and amazing people. Yvonne Donnelly, Maria Acosta, Michael Pelka from The Blaze, Stephanie Scruggs, Mimi Steele, Aaron Wilson, Jason Roberts from NetFusion Studios. All these people promoting the 912 Project, and I encourage you, this valued listener that we have here on the Lanterns Radio Network, to go to the 912-project.com to find these principles and values on their webpage. Share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter. We're trying to start the 912 movement again. At least I am. And again, I want to make it clear, not endorsed by these, but by this organization. I am not sponsored by them, but I believe that their mission is important. And what is their mission? The 912 Project is a volunteer-based, nonpartisan movement focusing on building and uniting our communities back to the place we were on September 12th, 2001, the day after America was attacked. The day after America was attacked, we were not obsessed with political parties, the color of skin, or what religion you practiced. We were united as Americans, standing together to protect the greatest nation ever created. Our goal is to bring us back to that same feeling of togetherness again. Our mission is to inspire individuals to connect with their communities through education, service, and dedication to the 9 principles and the 12 values to which we have committed. To find these principles and values, go to the 912project.com. That's the 912-project.com. The 912-project.com. Show, Dr. Jack Sava updates the medical condition of Congressman Steve Scalise. Right now, here is the clip.
Sustained a single rifle wound that entered in the area of the left hip. It traveled directly across towards the other hip in what we call a transpelvic gunshot wound. The round fragmented and did substantial damage to bones, internal organs, and blood vessels. I understand he was awake on scene, but by the time he was transported by helicopter to the MedStar Trauma Center, he was in shock. My partners, Dr. Tony Shiflett and Dr. Christine Trankium, saw him in the trauma center with the other doctors and nurses there. They treated him there and quickly brought him to the operating room where we performed surgery. In the operating room, he was in critical condition and received many units of transfused blood for ongoing hemorrhage from multiple locations. He received truly amazing anesthesia care from Dr. Eric Skolnick and Dr. Scott Frank. Due to their great work, we were able to get him through that procedure, and we then took him to the radiology suite, where he underwent an additional procedure by Dr. Arshad Khan to further control bleeding. From there, we went to the intensive care unit, where he got additional care under the direction of Dr. Chadi Abouasali, and he remains in the ICU today. Yesterday, Dr. Trankium and I did an additional operation, and Dr. Robert Golden, our director of orthopedic trauma, did an operation to repair a broken bone in his leg. The congressman's status remains critical. We are encouraged by improvement in his condition over the last 36 hours. We have controlled the internal bleeding, and his vital signs have stabilized. He will require additional operations to manage abdominal injuries and other bone injuries. Predicting the length of his hospital stay is difficult today. Presumably it will be easier in some days when more time has passed and we have more information. After he leaves the hospital, he will require a period of healing and of rehabilitation. On behalf of the MedStar Trauma Team, I want to thank the special agents on the scene as well as the first responders for everything that they did for those shooting victims. We are all well aware here at the MedStar Washington Hospital Center of all that those folks did to save these people. We here salute their commitment, their dedication, and their skill. I can answer a few questions, but as Donna said, it's possible that we will not be able to answer all the questions due to privacy concerns.
Dr. Salva, just a factual question here. You described multiple procedures. There's been some confusion on many of us are not medical professionals. What is the fair assessment of how many surgeries you've had? You talked about going in and out of the
Yeah.
So what's the best way to characterize these procedures and how many?
Well, there's actually a bit of semantic confusion there, and I leave it to you how to characterize. I think the reason for the semantic confusion is he went from an operation to a procedure that I mentioned in interventional radiology. Typically, we don't call that an operation or a surgery, although really it has many similarities. There's anesthesia, and in many ways it resembles an operation.
Did he come back up from anesthesia between the two?
No. The second possible point of confusion is that yesterday he underwent an operation that involved two separate surgical teams. It was in the same room in one continuous sitting with one set of anesthesia, but at first it was my team doing abdominal surgery and then Dr. Golden's team doing orthopedic surgery. So again, the opportunity for confusion about whether you count that as one or two.
And as a medical professional, you're reading one of our articles, the number you would say would be what to be most accurate?
2.
Thank you.
What are your major concerns going forward at this point in terms of his recovery? And do you expect Mr. Scalise to live, in most respects, a normal life? And what are the limitations that you foresee based on your experience?
Well, I don't want to get too far out ahead of myself. All of us who care for severely injured patients are very reluctant in the first few days to start predicting which way things can go with all the branches in the road that are to come. Usually, the initial period is about hemorrhage control. And I feel like we've made a lot of progress about that, and hopefully that is not going to be our biggest enemy any longer. Other things to worry about include infections and other complications that come about from intensive care.
And in terms of rehabilitation?
Well, hopefully you'll have an opportunity at some point to maybe talk to Dr. Golden about the orthopedic aspects. I think that we fully expect him to be able to walk, to be able to do, again, I don't want to speak to Dr. Golden, but my understanding is that he will be able to walk and hopefully run. As far as the degree of athletic limitation, I think I will kick all that to Dr. Golden to answer.
You kind of addressed this a little bit already, but I think a lot of people heard shot in the hip and then were surprised to hear that he was in critical condition. Can you describe what made these injuries so severe or so difficult to treat?
Well, I think I've thought about that because I was surprised by some of the reports also. I would encourage you to talk to your military medical colleagues about what it means to be shot with a high-velocity rifle in the hip region, because most of us would not even think to consider that a benign wound. As I said, in his case, the major initial risk to life is because of the hemorrhage that results when that bullet travels through blood vessels.
So it's a bleeding
thing.
Dr. Sell, has he been conscious at all during his time in the hospital? Has he been able to talk to his family, to any friends or anything like that? Has he been able to take visitors?
He's been sedated, but we've been able to turn down that sedation enough for him to respond to his family members, and he clearly knows that they're there and appreciates their presence.
Does he seem to understand at all what he's going through at this point?
I don't want to get into the details of what I think he's going through. I think that we're happy to see that he can respond to us and to the family.
Dr. Sell, was the broken leg a result of that bullet splintering once it entered his hip, or did that happen when he fell after he was shot?
No, it was a result of the bullet.
Is the bullet, where are you?
Typically, that's the first question that gunshot victims ask is, when are you taking the bullet out? It's quite common that we don't remove bullets and fragments, and that's the case here as well. That I have not counted, but I would guess that there are hundreds of fragments, and usually there's more risk involved in trying to find and remove those fragments than benefit. So we have no intention to try to remove all bullet fragments at this point.
Any internal organs that you were concerned about?
I think we've decided we're not going to get into too much detail about specific internal injuries at this time. Yes, sir.
Agent Griner, when might she be released?
I don't have information on that. Dr. Golden has operated on her, and I don't know the answer to that.
Only one surgery for her?
She has had one operation at this point. Dr. Golden could answer as to whether additional work will be needed.
The bottom line right now, you sound optimistic about the Congressman's outcome.
Well, I like to say it's my job to be pessimistic, and so if you accuse me of being optimistic, I feel bad about that. I feel a lot more confident and a lot more optimistic than I did 2-3 days ago.
How serious of a situation, how would you describe the seriousness of it when you were first here and the risk that he could possibly die?
I would say that when he arrived, he was in critical condition with an imminent risk of death.
How long have you been in hospital?
Again, it's too hard to say at this point. Once we get through a few more days, we might be able to prognosticate a little better, but now there are just too many forks in the road and to say when the final day is. He will certainly be in the hospital for a considerable period of time. presumably weeks.
I was surprised to hear you say that you expect him to walk again and even perhaps run again, given the fact that his hip was shattered. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that the main support structure of the erect body? And what kind of repair work is done to see that he can walk again?
Well, you're correct. It's a critical piece of support for standing and walking. And again, Dr. Golden would be a better person to answer that question. But our orthopedic trauma surgeons are very good, and they can work miracles.
In that vein, there's no nerve damage or anything like that?
I think also I will sort of stop at the really detailed assessment of each individual injury. Again, we sort of decided that we weren't going to go quite there today.
I know you can't say for sure, but has there been any thought to downgrade this condition?
I have not given much thought to word choice as of yet. We've been awfully busy. I haven't given much thought to that kind of word choice yet. I have to admit I find that challenging because there's not really strict definitions. Your idea of critical and my idea of critical and Donna's idea of critical are probably all radically different. I think it's sort of a misperception that those terms are well defined, so I usually steer away from them.
You said he was critical when he came in and imminent risk of death. While he's still at critical, is he given that risk of death been lifted?
I think that his risk of death right now is substantially lower than when he came in. And certainly, whatever you think of the word critical, he was as critical as you can be when he came in. So there was no controversy about word choice then.
A couple more questions.
Does the risk of infection increase with each surgery?
No, I wouldn't say that. It increases over a period of time. Usually, infections typically don't happen in the first couple days, but then you enter a time period where infections are more common, regardless of surgery yes or surgery no.
What do you think the next step will be in his treatment? Right now, an additional operation? Where are we going from here?
Yes, he has additional operations that he will need before leaving the hospital.
Is there a recuperation period between now and whenever the next operation would be? I mean, I guess I don't know how aggressive you would be in sort of that timetable.
Yeah, I think that the next operation would likely take place within 48 hours, but it's a pretty dynamic decision-making process. What typically takes place when patients are severely injured like this is called damage control surgery. And what that means is that rather than trying to do everything in one operation on day one, we generally stage the operations. The first operation is dedicated usually mainly to bleeding control, and the other types of work you have to do are staged for later operations.
You said infection.
Infection is a significant risk.
Dr. Zell, did you see
I think so. I think that's a good possibility.
A year, 6 months,
Hard to say.
Thank you all very much.
Obviously, our thought and prayers are with Scalise and all those affected by the shooting on Wednesday. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Welcome, Kmart shoppers. Kmart has low discount prescription prices. Visit our pharmacist today and compare our prices to what you're presently paying elsewhere. You'll be glad you did.
Rasmussen reports made some phone calls this week to gauge Americans' perspectives on the congressional shooter James T. Hodgkinson. The 1,000-person survey found that most Americans connect Hodgson's actions to political anger. Here's the results of the 1,000 Americans surveyed. A total of 55% blamed the shooting at the Republican congressional baseball practice on political anger in this country. Over a quarter, 28%, called it a random act of violence by an unstable person, and 17% said they were unsure. Either way, by comparison, just 28% said the shooting of Gabrielle Giffords and the killing of 6 others in Arizona was a result of political anger. Again, as we said at the end of the last segment, our prayers are with Scalise and all those affected by the shooting. Pray for healing in this nation. Pray for healing. Transition on Friday, this from the Daily Wire in an article by Hank Berrien. Ann Coulter, she's not too happy about President Trump. Coulter started by issuing a series of tweets blasting Trump for his lassitude in building a wall between the U.S. and Mexico. She started this today, actually. Anyone, said Coulter, in a southwestern state who strolls to the border and drops a brick will have done more to build the wall than Donald Trump. If VP Pence were smart, he'd start making noises about how he'd love to build a wall. He'd be sworn in as president in about 2 weeks. Coulter continued, I thought with Trump we'd finally have a president helping our country. So far, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Italy, China, North Korea, today, Cuba. And in another tweet, she said, at least Cuba's in our hemisphere. How long can it be before Trump gets to America? All those tweets from Ann Coulter sounds like, and this from Ann Coulter, sounds like the big sellout is coming. Oh well, the voters did what we could. If Trump sells out, it's not our fault. Would like to say that the never-Trumpers on the conservative side of the spectrum called Trump's disingenuousness and not being a legitimate conservative, but I'm trying to be a bridge builder, so I'm just going to skim over that. In May, Coulter slammed Trump over the budget deal, writing, quote, not only is there no funding for a wall, but thanks to the deft negotiating skills of House Speaker Paul Ryan, the bill actually prohibits money from being spent on a wall. By May 15th, Coulter was, quote, near breaking point. I'm not happy with what has happened so far. I guess we have to try to push him to keep his promises, but this isn't North Korea, and if he doesn't keep his promises, I'm out. This is why we voted for him. I think everyone who voted for him knew his personality was grotesque. It was the issues. Ann Coulter, just last year, August 2016, wrote, In Trump We Trust, e pluribus awesome, in support of Donald Trump in his 2016 campaign for president. So she's gone from In Trump We Trust to he's a sellout to he's grotesque to what she said after Mediaite contacted her. She said, it was a whole series today. This jackass is really ticking me off. And today, Cuba? Effing Cuba? If he'd run a campaign promising to do everything he's done in the last 6 months, he'd never have been elected. So she's gone from In Trump We Trust to sellout to grotesque to now he's a jackass. It's been a fun last couple of years, gang. It's been a fun last couple of years. Thanks for tuning in this week. This is the Free Stater. I'm Ian Ballinger from the plains of Kansas. Have a wonderful weekend.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.